Hello, my name is Andrew Thake. I'm the Divisional Director with Resourcing Tomorrow. Delighted to be joined today by Miranda Werstiuk, who's Head of Origination at Monetary Metals. Delighted to have you with us today, Miranda.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for the opportunity to have a chat today.
First question. A number of our listeners won't be aware as to who Monetary Metals are. Can you tell us a little bit about the company?
Yes, so Monetary Metals is a unique and disruptive provider of capital denominated in metal. So our primary focus is leasing and lending metal, gold and silver. We have a platform that drives the whole business, right? So we look for investors to bring their metal to us, and what we do is we provide a yield on gold paid in gold, right? So the thesis is to bring gold back into the monetary system, and gold is as sound money. The company was founded in 2012 by Keith Weiner. He's an entrepreneur, a brilliant man with a vision in and around gold. And since 2012, we have grown this company into something like I said, quite unique. I think if you look globally, you won't find another company like Monetary Metals and what we're trying to achieve with the capability, capacity, and intelligence of the team that we have on hand today.
And you mentioned obviously about gold being, the key thesis that underpins what Monetary Metals do. What particular thematics within the gold industry are you focusing on for 2025?
So that's interesting. I mean, we have two what I would say trajectories of providing capital, and one is leasing, where we lease metal to users of metal, and one is lending, where we provide a loan structure that's backed by metal to producers of metal. Now that could be miners, but it also could be for example, a recycler who is taking e-waste and producing on the other end metal. So I joined in November 2023 after 30 years of resource finance expertise on the banking and lending side. And really have grown to see how gold in particular can be used as a structure to fund opportunities, right? I mean, obviously, the thesis is that gold is not just a commodity. It's not something that you pull out of the ground and produce and use in multiple applications, but that actually it has monetary value and substance. So we denominate all our transactions in ounces, right? So for example, on the leasing side, we lease metal. It is used as inventory, working capital to help businesses drive production of jewelry, coins, bars, etc. And then on the lending side, ounce denominated, here's 5,000 ounces for you to continue to drive your project forward, expand production, add equipment, and you repay us, Monetary Metals, your principal and interest in ounces, right? So really everything is ounce denominated, regardless of the price of gold. So.
Mm-hmm. You also sit on our investment advisory board, and you'll be attending Resourcing Tomorrow this year. Can you share a little bit about what are some of the green flags that you look out for before deciding to make an investment or lend some money? And I probably just as importantly, what are some of the red flags that you look out for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've over my career have had the benefit of working with exploration, development, and producing companies, right? So I've seen the spectrum. I've seen the ups and downs. I've seen cycles. For us as an origination team, it boils down to, really management is key, because I always ascribed to the view that you can have an asset that is fair, right? A fair asset with resource in a reasonable jurisdiction, but needs work, right? It needs work to get it across the line and get it into production. With a capable, strong, intelligent, driven, focused management team, that those assets will have success. On the flip side, if you have a really solid, good asset, and you have a team that is less capable, shall we say, I've seen through my career where those assets generally do not make it across the line. It's really about management, and this is, as we know, this is a relationship business, right? Mm-hmm. And so you really, we spend time looking at management, track record, history. How does the team work together? How does the team work with their capital providers? Are there synergies? Or is there conflict out of the gate? Is there friction? I really focus on people's superpowers, right? So how do you get the best out of the people that you're working with in order to be able to execute? Obviously, the asset has to have merit. It has to have that technical basis, right? We've seen through our cycles and careers, assets that have not made it across the line. You need to have that technical base. You need to have the geology. You need to be able to understand how to get that material out of the ground cost effectively, and then be able to ultimately, drive revenue, right? Yeah. So I'd say management, the asset and jurisdiction, right? There are places that we would not go. We need to manage geopolitical risk. How do you price that into your, we're a lender. How do you price that into your transactions? What does risk look like? How do you manage that risk going forward? So yeah, that's really where sort of the green flags would sit. Obviously red flags are, assets with, and I've seen this, assets that sort of turn over consistently, right? Yeah. They start out in company A, and then they don't evolve. There's problems, and then they're repackaged, rebranded, and come out in company B, right? So I think if anybody in their due diligence process has to be meticulous about asset history, and company history and people history.
Yeah. One sort of question with regards to how Monetary Metals approaches its investments. There's been some pushback against ESG in the last year, or pushback against the acronym ESG. How important is ESG to Monetary Metals in 2025?
Well, that's I think it has to be part of your assessment of any project, right? Several years ago, I remember moderating a panel at Resourcing Tomorrow, and one of the panelists, Elena Corbani, who I've known for a very long time, we discussed the ESG question, and he said, it's been part and parcel of the business. It is how you have to do good business, right? And you need to figure out what that looks like. Yes, it's important. Obviously, we're not going to look at a project that has significant environmental issues, has not spent the time to really put together a holistic operational execution and closure plan. You always have to be aware of the people, the communities that you're impacting, and the relationships that you need to create and sustain with those groups. So I think it has to be part of any discussion or dialogue. And certainly when we're looking at projects and reviewing, we do take time to look at community and people and obviously environment, right? Because you are extracting material out of the ground, right? So yeah, it's part of our holistic due diligence.
And one last question. I always like to ask speakers some slightly kind of different questions to what they usually get asked. What's the most influential book that you've ever read, and why?
So that's really interesting. And I come at finance from I would say a bit of a unique path. I'm a biologist. I did fieldwork as a biologist. I did a second degree in anthropology, so really understanding people, communities, interaction of communities. Culture is key. Culture is key in any business. And so, and then I did business after that. So I kind of come at mining resources. I'd say actually quite well prepared, right? Because it's environment, it's people, and it's business. The book that I read, and it was a long time ago, is a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. And it really talks about power, and the impact of I guess industrial revolutions, and the impact on society and culture, and the friction, and ultimately wars that were caused by different cultures, the impact of technology and innovation, and where we are left after that, right? So I found it actually quite a terrifying book, because part of the thesis is, and this goes back to my anthropology, is you're unleashing disease vectors, because you are creating conflict and you're interacting with cultures, and you're driving innovation. What is the resulting impact on people and the planet from that? And so I actually I reread it, because it was part of my coursework in my anthropology degree, and then I reread it because it's quite a timeless book, and ideally I think it'd be great if we learn from history, but we do and we don't. So understanding how societies interact, and this ripples into everything, right? Business, economies, social norms, cultural norms. I think that book had a profound impact on my view of the world at the time. It's an old book.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Miranda. It's actually a book I read many years ago, so I would certainly thoroughly endorse your choice. But we've run out of time today. But thank you very much for your time. Pleasure having you,
Thanks,
Miranda.
Andrew. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.